Hello, everybody, and welcome to the experience. And I want to welcome Michael Weir on the show. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Well, you guys are in for a really awesome treat today because Michael is the go-to guy for all of the dark stuff, clearing, healing, life coaching. He works with the stuff that most other healers won't touch. So let me tell you a little bit about his resume. He's from Pittsburgh, East Coast, and check this out. He is the main therapist and life coach for movie stars and actors, directors, screenwriters, musicians, all of those rock star people. This is who they're going to, and anyone else under the sun, doctors, nurses, occupational therapists. And so he does a number of things, and we're going to talk specifically about his work clearing entity, demon attachments, full possessions, and clearing etheric and other types of implants. And you can check out his stuff, and I'm going to have this in the description box below, michaelweir.com. And so if you have heavy lifting, also my people in the hypnotherapy community go to Michael when we have heavy lifting. So he's the go-to guy for hypnotherapists all over the world. And I know this as a fact. This is actually how I got in touch with him. All over the world, when our clients have entity or demon attachments or full possession and etheric implants, but also when we ourselves have them. And so, you guys, I'm really excited about this hour. And Michael, it's so good to have you here in person.
Thank you. Thank you once again.
Absolutely. So this show, I really want to talk about stuff that light workers and healers and people who tend and lean towards the spiritual side and metaphysics. Well, also people who don't. It's the dark side. I want to talk about the dark side. And Michael, you are the perfect person to talk about this with because you've seen it all. And I'll even say from my own experience, I had a crazy attachment in my jaw that was giving me a hard time. So from personal experience that Michael has helped me, and I can talk more about that later. But you just sort of bring it in. How did you get involved with this stuff?
So actually many years ago, and seeing clients, I used to do a lot of past life regressions, of course, getting to the roots of their issues or current life regressions, depending on where the issues actually got started at. And then I started noticing that sometimes the issues were not just from experiences, particularly like anxieties and depressions, which I work with a lot. In fact, anxiety is the #1 thing that I work with. Depression, #2.
I want to hear all about that. But keep going. I won't interrupt.
Okay. So to give you an example, I had a 13-year-old boy come in, and his parents said that he's had really, really bad depression most of his life. They tried many different types of medication, and nothing really seemed to work too well. And they both sat in on his session, and I could feel right away that he had something going on with him, and that was really, really heavy. And when I tuned into it, I was like, okay. So ever since I was little, I talked to the Holy Spirit ever since I was little, and that's what my terminology for it. Some people call it the universe, and whatever you want to call it doesn't matter. But it's what guides me during sessions.
Do you have a religious background in your heritage?
Actually, no. My parents weren't really into religion at all, but I can remember being like 2 years old and talking to God, and like no one told me about God, but that's as far back as I remember. So I've always had a real strong connection, and I've always had real strong guidance. Not that I've always listened to it, but I've always had it though. So
stabilize that? The phone.
Oh, the video?
Yeah, just it's a little bit woggly.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay, because you're perfectly framed.
Okay.
Awesome. Sorry, I was getting a little nauseous.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that.
No,
Okay.
I hear you. Anyway, go ahead.
So anyways, so this client comes in and I'm being told this is a demon attachment and how to go about getting rid of it. So I'm working with a kid. I'm able to get rid of his attachment. And as soon as I got rid of it, he's able to start talking. And he said, I knew it was there the whole time, but I wasn't allowed to say anything. And he was smiling. In fact, he started laughing after the session, and his parents both start crying. And I look over at them like, okay. And his mom composed herself and she said, we haven't seen him smile or laugh since he was 4 years old, ever. Because that's when I came to be with him, when he was 4. So from 4 to 13, he suffered with this.
Wow. So oh, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt, but I'm
so anyways, after getting rid of it, he was fine. And it's not always the cause of depression and anxiety, but a lot of times it is.
Wow.
So it's one of those things where when it is, it's really important to be able to get rid of it.
Now, in all the years that you've been working with spirit attachments, are there any hallmarks that you feel like you've identified that people might be able to recognize in themselves?
When it's completely unexplained, or like sudden, very, very sudden onset of depression out of nowhere, it's generally more likely from attachments. Normal chemical depressions, generally over time, or if it's caused by issues or things going on or post-traumatic stress, it's generally more of an over time creeping up thing where it just gets worse. It's not a bam, all of a sudden it's here. Generally when it's like that, that's usually more from either attachments, or eventually if there's enough of those attachments, it can turn into basically full possession, where that person's conscious mind gets completely repressed and that entity takes over. And in those kind of cases, it's usually where it's really, really, really bad, where they're, talking in demonic voice and trying to kill people and everything else under the sun. But I've had people come in and start talking in demonic voice under hypnosis and flapping around in the chair. And once you get rid of that, they're back to normal again.
Wow. So you've seen that. I've never seen that personally, and I don't know that I have the constitution for it, but tell us a little bit about the experience that you had.
So, I don't know when the first time was, because I do, but I've been doing it so many years and so many cases. So one comes into mind though, of a lady who was actually a healer and knew that she had something really dark attached to her, but wasn't able to get rid of it. And her friend had told me about her. And I actually worked with it. And when I did, it was really attached to the point where being a possession, where it completely changed into its personality instead of hers. And it said, you can't get rid of me, I'm going to kill her. And her health had declined over the course of like 6 months, where she was so pale and had so many health issues because it was hell bent on killing her. But we always, number one, we always have free will. Okay. But people don't understand how powerful that free will is. When we choose to truly invoke it, number one, and number two, when we aren't saying we don't deserve. If you say, I don't deserve to be healthy, I don't deserve good things, well, you're actually blocking them from coming, and you're also blocking being able to be helped. I can't help anyone that says that they don't deserve.
Right. So opening the door to the bad things, to the opposite, to the
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt.
Very good point.
Yeah. So people have to know that they deserve to be healthy and happy, and they don't need to suffer. Um, anyways, when they choose to get rid of these attachments, and I have them invoke their free will because they're agreeing to, and they're agreeing to be worthy of help, then I can help real easily. I can get rid of pretty much anything, and unmanifesting them from time is how I go about getting rid of a good portion of them. But even demons, though, have free will. So I usually bring in Archangel Michael, and Archangel Michael, I basically ask just to bring any of the ones that want to go into the light, because a lot of times people have more than just one. A lot of times they have several attachments, and a lot of them will choose
more than one.
Excuse me?
If you've got one, you've likely got more than one, kind of a thing.
A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when the people are not possessed, but they just have a lot attached to them, it's interesting because there'll be a good portion of them that will choose to go to their place in the light, because even they have a rightful place in the light. Mm. So they'll choose to go with Archangel Michael, or they can choose to go to their perception of hell. Mm. I say perception because it doesn't actually exist, but their perception of it is what makes it a place where they can go. What's that?
I want to stick a pin in that, because I think that's a really important attribute of this to talk about. So I'm making a note of that. So keep going.
And then the other choice is to be unmanifested, which they don't feel any pain. It's just basically undoing them from time. Because in ultimate reality, like a lot of people will say, well, demons don't actually exist, and there is only God. Well, if you're talking about ultimate reality, yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm. But if you're talking about here, mm-hmm. so many people here believe that it exists, that it does.
Yeah.
Whether you believe it or not, it is here in this realm where we're at, which has nothing to do with ultimate reality.
Well, let's go about that right now, because you're bringing that up. Go ahead.
Okay, so you've heard of oneness, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there's either oneness with God or there is duality, but you can't have both. They're mutually exclusive concepts. Mm-hmm. So only one is ultimate reality. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to tell you which one, but I'll leave it up to the viewers to decide,
right,
through their experiences, which one is true. But our perception of here changes from person to person. And I've had some experiences in this lifetime of oneness, where I didn't feel anything but unconditional love for about 8.5 months. And if I physically touched someone, they could feel it and experience it. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And I wasn't able to perceive duality anymore. Everything just kind of flowed together. Wow. But that's one of those things where it was very hard for me to do my job, though, because my job is being able to help people mainly with health issues and traditional like therapy, only subconscious therapy, not conscious therapy. Mm-hmm. Is the majority.
Make a distinction for people who may not know of what you mean.
Basically using hypnosis to get to the roots of their issues so much faster than just traditional talk therapy. Traditional talk therapy, you're talking to the conscious mind, and our critical factor is swung down So it's like, nope, that's not what I already have. Nope, that's not what I already have. I'm not listening to any of this. So that's why it takes so long to make any kind of progress, where when you already go to the subconscious and you're already there, it's very, very easy to connect a person with their soul. How do they know they have a soul first? Because we're animated.
Right.
That which animates this body is your soul or your spirit. When we leave, this body, this car doesn't move anymore.
Right.
It just lays down. But we don't die. It's not possible for us to.
Yeah.
We're energy. We just go into a different place. But anyways, people's issues.
That distinction.
Sure. So people's issues a lot of times, and I'm kind of getting off topic, ain't I? Because we were talking about the dark stuff.
It's totally flow. I mean, I think all these things are so critical, I think, to having a broader view of there's so much going on. And I think that whole oneness versus duality component is really important too, because it kind of gives kind of a big picture, but then also, I mean, for me, how I sort of conceptualize it in my own mind is that when we're in this physical earthly experience, it makes sense that we're coming here to have this physical experience that is filled with contrast and duality. And that can be very delicious, but then there's also these thought forms and components that we create with our own minds that have I don't know, form to that, create form, that create things.
Absolutely. So it's like, why are we here? Well, we're here to experience whatever you choose. You have the free will to experience anything you want to experience for as many different lifetimes on as many different worlds as you want to experience it, until you're satisfied and go, okay, I don't really feel like doing this anymore. And then you go back home. So,
and when you're in it, why wouldn't that be cool? Why wouldn't you want to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's one of those things where when people are very spiritual though, and they've kind of they're getting to that time where they're like, I've had enough of this. And that's when like Thich Nhat Hanh's quote comes into mind, that we're here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness. But we're only here to do that when that's our choice.
Yeah.
If that is our choice though, and some of the viewers might be interested in doing that, there's many, many paths to that. But a really cool one is starting to remove labels, because every label that we have of ourselves and of other things puts everything into boxes.
Sure.
So if we look in the mirror though, and we go, okay, Michael, I'm going to take the label of Michael, peel it off. I'm going to take the label of human, peel it off. Hypnotherapist, regression hypnotherapist, guitar collector, everything that makes up the box of Michael, all the labels that are from other people, all the self labels, every way that you can possibly describe yourself when you're looking in the mirror. So you can't come up with another one, both good and bad. You might say kind, generous, get rid of all those till there's nothing left. And then say I am, and then don't put anything after I am ever. Because if your path is you want to experience your lack of separation, anything you put after I am puts you back into a little box. So same thing with everything your eyes fall on. Take the label of everything else and get rid of it till you can't come up with a way of describing it. And what ends up happening is you begin to experience the lack of separation between you and everything else. And we begin to start to flow with life. Everything's just energy. So as everything's just energy, sadness, it's coming up to talk about sadness. Here's the way to get rid of sadness permanently. So Buddhism says all sadness is from attachment. And while that's true, they don't really say anything about, they're like, don't have attachment, but they don't say anything more than that. Mm-hmm. And people are like, what the hell's that about? Like, how do I do that?
Right. The
So
non-attachment thing.
So first off, realizing that everything in life is energy. Okay, everything is just energy. So here in the West, go all the way back to a toy that you can remember from childhood. What comes to mind?
I had a Humpty Dumpty that I called Daka.
Okay. So whose toy was that?
Mine.
Okay. Go a little bit old. Go. Cool. Go a little bit older. Did you ever have a bicycle?
Yeah.
Okay. So whose bicycle was it?
Mine.
Okay.
Mine.
Go older to when you had your first car.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so whose car was it?
Mine-ish.
Okay. I love it.
Had to share it.
So here in the West, we are used to owning things.
Right.
And often we'll take that ownership also into relationships even. But all sadness in life only comes from one thing. It comes from our perception of loss. And that's it. Mm-hmm. So if you realize that everything is just energy and that everything flows, energy never stops moving ever, not even for a second. If you look at like a wooden table, if you look at it under an electron microscope, the molecules are still moving. They're just moving slower because it's more dense. Right. So in life, though, everything moves, which means objects will come into your life, they'll flow back out. Sometimes they flow back in again. People will come in, they'll flow out. Sometimes they'll flow back again. So if we decide to start living as though everything is just energy and let go of the ownership of it, that's where you let go of attachment. And that's where you go beyond your ability to ever experience sadness again.
And you
if
can
that makes
live
sense.
as your soul in a physical body. How cool
Excuse me?
And you can live as your soul in a physical
Absolutely.
body. Like you can
Absolutely.
You can recognize your soul energy as opposed to this part of you, this play that we're participating in, this role
Exactly.
as Nora
Exactly.
or as Michael.
Yeah.
And I love what you're saying, and I want to talk about it, but I want to talk even more about the dark stuff because
Sure.
I think just with all the energy that's going on, and we're very soon heading for the 12-12 portal, and the human resonance is spiking like crazy. There's a lot of dark energy sort of being released, and people are like, what do I do? And what does it mean too, you know? On some level, I would love to talk about kind of historically how some of these darker energies came into play. And I don't know if I will even have time to talk about off-planet stuff and what you know about that. And I might even have you back to talk about that in the future.
Sure.
But what I would, so I was just listening to a podcast on pedophilia. And it was just about like there's people, I'll just put it this way, like there are people who are really exploring the dark, and from working with me that I've had past lives where I was very, very dark, and two in particular, in releasing this attachment that I had in my jaw, two of them in particular where I was literally devouring other people, and I had also been devoured and then became sort of this perpetrator and dark person, and where I was sacrificed as a 13-year-old in Egypt, so as a boy, and I had also had that sort of darkness around. And so there's something happening, I believe, about kind of the reconciliation of this sort of darker energy, and there's an entrainment of the planet, I think, that is lightening. The planet itself is going into a more higher vibrational place, as evidenced by the Schumann resonance, and we're on this. And we're being
Yes, yes.
ingrained in that energy too. And so I'm curious what you feel like you understand of the darker frequencies and the power dynamics that are shifting, and what you're seeing in your sessions.
So one of the things that is really pushing the darkness in people is ego. And the reason why is because of fear. Ego perceives God as a white dude who's like 8 feet tall with a big white beard, who's gonna come kick your ass because he's like Charles Bronson, man. Like, you killed his family and he's coming for you. And I know that to be true from years and years of having people actually talk to their ego. So rooting and grounding them in their spirit first, then having them actually talk to their ego. And their ego is really scared shitless because it doesn't remember that God's unconditional love. So in ultimate reality,
Really
the ego doesn't have an identity in ultimate reality, but it does here. So a lot of people, as they're becoming more spiritual, they're trying to kick the ego's ass. They're trying to kick it to the curb while they're still partially identified with it, which creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of upheaval because you can't beat something up while you're still identified with it.
Right.
So this,
somehow by hating it, it will release it, and that just strengthens it.
exactly. Because the ego knows how to do one thing really, really well, which is judge yourself and judge everybody else, and find any way or any form possible to judge, which is what really draws all the dark stuff, because the dark stuff is all based, and it's not created by the ego, it's made by the ego. That's how you can tell the difference. Anything that's made is made here, and it will always decay, die, and fall apart eventually. Anything that's created is actually timeless and eternal. So if you watch your speech and you're really focused on that which is made, you know that doesn't last forever, even if it seems like it sucks to be in it temporarily. So one of the things that I've noticed with people is they get less stuff coming to them when they start doing this in meditations, which is going up to their ego, rooting and grounding in their spirit, going up to their ego, giving it a big hug, and imagine bringing it and everyone they love to God, and all merging as one.
So how do you bring people to connect with their rooting and grounding into their spirit?
Oh, good question. So first off, let's do it with you right now.
Okay.
Woohoo! All right. So imagine you're outside your body, and you're looking back at your mind, and you're just staring at it, being really, really patient. You're just staring at it, and you're just waiting for your next thought to come. And you're just staring, waiting, and watching. So does anything happen, or does nothing happen?
Yeah, I can see sort of little blips of light that are like, I'm seeing a brain is what I'm seeing. And then like little blips of light sort of sparking at the entry point, I guess, or the moment of a thought.
Okay. So just keep staring at it. And do any normal thoughts come when you just keep staring, and don't take your inner eyes off of it?
No real thoughts are coming, except I'm noticing that it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like growing.
Okay, go ahead and open your eyes. That's how you root and ground immediately in your spirit on your own, is just watch your mind. Your conscious mind can't be watched and still function. I can't remember what movie it was, but it was a spiritual movie, because I've watched so damn many of them. And I get them all mixed up. They just kind of merge together. But in the movie, they were having a person look at different things in life, and at different things and different emotions, different parts of their brain would light up, activity. And the only time that didn't happen, even outer space, when they had them think about outer space, somewhere in the brain would light up. When they had them observe themselves, nothing happened.
Wow.
And nothing happens because when you observe yourself, you have to break identification with the mind. See, the mind isn't, Eckhart Tolle was 100% correct in The Power of Now, which if somebody watching this has not already read or listened to, I highly recommend getting on audiobook, not the book, because there's so much speech inflections, even though he's very monotone. There's so much speech inflections about little areas that you'll understand it a lot more listening to the audio.
Oh, thank you for saying that, because I needed to hear that. Really, that dropped in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's so amazing because he brings together so many different teachings from so many different eras. And it's all just amazing. But he says in that very correctly, you are not your mind. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think we are our mind. And then they think, if I'm my mind, I must be fucking crazy. Because my thoughts are crazy.
Yes.
And we are not our...
Yeah, it's really fun sometimes.
Yeah, so we are not our mind. Our mind is actually a tool that we're supposed to be using, like a hammer. Yeah. But it's more like a computer that we're supposed to be using. Yeah. If we have to schedule something, we have to use our mind to schedule it.
Yeah.
What do we do when we're not scheduling? Go back to watching it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Watch it whenever you don't need to actually use it as a tool, because what ends up happening is if you don't do that, then it starts running amok.
Well, and wouldn't you agree that the mind wants to be utilized to its fullest extent? It's like an eager helper, but it's like when not utilized appropriately, it's going to go find other things to get involved in.
Yeah,
not necessarily.
Because it's totally based on duality, and it's totally based on ego, 100%. So that's why it's constantly wants your attention, because as long as it can have you focus on the negative stuff, that's the vibration that you're putting out. So if you're putting out negative, what comes back?
Negative.
You know, exactly. So that's another way of attracting all these dark things to you, is constantly focusing on the worst shit that could be happening. And that's what ends up happening, because we're here to experience and we're creators. So anything that we constantly focus on, we're broadcasting that frequency out.
Yes.
So what comes back can only be that which is on that same exact frequency. Yeah. So that is exactly what comes back to us.
Yes.
So that's why they tell you in anything about manifestation, unless you purposely are really wanting to experience nasty stuff in your life, first thing in the morning, focus on that which makes you happy. Whether it's listening to music, whether it's hanging out with someone you love, whatever it is that makes you happy, start your day off that way and really start putting those vibrations out. Like I've got a couple of friends that go, I can't believe God would do this to me. Every day is horrible. Every day. And I'm like, God doesn't do anything to anyone here. There's constant unconditional love coming, but you chose this experience and you chose it to be whatever it is you're focusing on, because you're you're making all of this, not really creating it. You're making all of this every day by your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. And I think that's a really interesting, I feel like there's a cognitive dissonance or a distortion that people sometimes aren't ready to tap into, and that's perfectly fine. That's their free will. There's sort of like this moment, and I think it has to do with being able to sort of transcend the self and see ourselves outside ourselves in a more sort of detached way from ego,
Yes.
perhaps, that you can
Yeah,
say,
definitely.
oh, my thoughts actually, like that, you start to the points start to connect.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that thought brought in this. And but
Yeah.
there's the responsibility that I think people there's like a need to be able to take responsibility, or you have to have a certain level of responsibility where you can own your stuff before you can actually say, oh, it's not God beating me up, or it's not some, the victim mindset, I guess, is what I'm talking
Right.
about. Being
Yeah.
blaming, pointing fingers externally instead of taking responsibility for what we're initiating in our own creative capabilities as a soul.
Exactly. And another thing that comes with that is people who are constantly focusing on the negative and constantly focusing on like attachments and saying, I just keep getting possessed all the time, keeps happening, and I'll have to keep clearing them, and I'm trying to get them to change what's going on so that they don't keep remanifesting it also, because if they keep remanifesting it, I'll have to keep clearing them constantly. And is that making sense?
Yeah. It's sort of like they're not owning the fact that they're opening the gateway for that attachment to take place.
Yes.
Not taking
Yes.
responsibility for your health and wellness.
Yeah.
Is the same
So,
kind of thing.
So what ends up happening a lot of times too is people end up wrapping their identity around it.
How so?
And that's
More about that.
anything that we say on a regular basis. In other words, people will go, oh man, my anxiety is just so unbelievable every day. It's just awful. I just wake up and I can't do anything, and it's my anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the anxiety,
Yeah.
it's my anxiety. And when you have it day after day after day after day, people root and ground their identity in it without knowing it. They're not purposely trying to do that.
Right.
Same thing with people who are always fearful of attachments. What ends up happening is that's what they're broadcasting constantly. So it's so easy for the attachments to happen because that's what they're focusing on.
Ooh, look at that. Look at that person lighting up for us. Or like people,
Exactly.
I get practice, oh, so-and-so ruined my life.
Yes.
Like where you're letting people have the power to ruin your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And then sometimes the people will get into a habit of saying, oh my God, everyone ruins my life.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the vibration and the frequency that they're broadcasting. So since you're here to experience whatever it is that you want, the universe itself here doesn't understand negatives, and it doesn't really care.
Right.
It's whatever experience you focus on is what you get.
It's honoring what we're broadcasting and transmitting.
Yeah, because what we're broadcasting and transmitting is what we're choosing to experience.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, totally.
So someone might say to that, though, well, what about that kid who got that attachment when he was young? And I always am curious, so I ask, what was happening when you were 4? Well, his family was in a very, very negative situation. So was he. Because he didn't know anything. He just looked out for what was happening with his family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that was manifested at that time.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I think that's also another reason why another sort of difficult thing that I notice that people have a hard time understanding is why negative things would happen to little ones. And it's the energetic environment that they're in.
Yes. And sometimes it is that their soul is choosing that experience for whatever it is.
Right.
And I'll give you a good example of that. And sometimes they're actually like teaching, like say teaching a life lesson. It didn't have to do with attachments, but there was a guy who anytime that he went into business meetings, he would get really, really flush immediately. And he'd start sweating so bad that he wasn't able to continue the meetings. Wow. And he goes, I don't understand what this is about, because I've got like zero fear of talking in front of people, but like, why does this happen to me? So he came in, so we brought up that feeling and we created what's called an affect bridge. So an affect bridge is when you bring up an emotion and then you travel back on that emotion. Now, normal psychologists try to keep this from happening. And hypnotherapists, on the other hand, purposely make it happen, because it gets us to what the hell the roots are of the issues. So we travel back on that.
Quantum portal to the origin. It's like
exactly. It is a direct line. Yeah. It might take you to a subsequent sensitizing events first, which generally it will. Mm-hmm. And then we'll get back to that ISE, or initial sensitizing event, that got that whole ball rolling in the first place. Well, he went back to a past lifetime. He was a 3-year-old little girl. And he was teaching the life lesson of extreme remorse to this soldier. So his mom in that lifetime is carrying him, and people were throwing rocks at them. And then he knew this was going to happen ahead of time, which was that soldier had to take him off of his mom and throw him, as all these people were watching. Keep in mind, they were all the eyes were on him, all those big crowd.
Right.
Took him off of his mom and threw him into this giant fire. So that's where everybody's eyes on him, and that flush came up from, that we had to get rid of. But that's to show you in that situation. He came in teaching a life lesson of extreme remorse. Did it work? Yes, because we connected with the soul of that soldier and talked to it. And that soldier had nightmare after nightmare from doing that. But he knew if he didn't, he would have got killed. But if he could have went back and do it all over again, he said, I would have chose to die instead of doing it, because it was so horrific. But he learned that lesson of extreme remorse. So why do we have to learn any life lessons? Number one, we don't. We don't.
That's
we
plain.
We choose to learn them because they're experiences. And
I put it to people this way, when you're in the spirit realm, things are really easy, and you get to
yes.
What we have access to is really magnificent and fun and amazing, but there's nothing wrong going on. And so there's something about having a gritty, and not all souls are going to have earthly or physical experiences, but think about it, how delicious it is to be in a physical body. You can eat, you can make love, you can dance, you can run around, and it's physical.
Yeah,
swimming,
absolutely.
It's
absolutely.
So I get it. I am totally in touch with why my soul wants to be here. It's so amazing. Yeah,
definitely.
But it can be challenging. People who choose, I know it's hard to believe, choose to come in with disability or with cognitive or physical illnesses.
So there's so many things that you learn over time, especially doing this work and having people channel. But you just reminded me of something just awesome. So I was working with a client many, many years ago, and she started channeling this little boy who was mentally handicapped. And he said, hey, I want to thank you because you do spiritual writing. And he said, you tuned into our network at times. So basically he said, when we come in, we're all here to raise the vibration of the planet and unconditional love, and to teach unconditional love from our caregivers who end up loving the fact that they're taking care of us. And we come in because we are all telepathically, we're all psychically linked. And we have singular focus going on, which are all these wonderful teachings about unconditional love that people can pick up on if they choose. And hopefully they inspires them to acts of unconditional love.
Well,
but that's why we're here.
Hold up.
Yeah.
You are talking about something so cool and totally like, so you're talking about kids who are handicapped.
Mentally handicapped, yes.
So,
all of them, he said.
Yeah,
Every
I
single
know that
one of them are all linked.
Autistic kids are highly telepathic. They're like, they're superstar seeds, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh, so cool.
So they're all very, very advanced solos who are here. And it's so funny, he said, and the kid said, it's so funny that people, like some people will look down on us or feel bad for us. And he goes, like, so the opposite is true. Because like we're all master teachers and we're all teaching master lessons that are really hard to learn, because unconditional love is the hardest one to learn because it has nothing to do with the ego. It only has to do with your soul. Mm-hmm. Your ego doesn't understand what unconditional love is because it only knows how to judge things.
Right.
So it doesn't understand the experience at all. It understands instead conditional love.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool. And that reminds me too, and thank you for bringing it up, this experience of working with clients who are, well, and in myself too, we have a tendency, because of our own suffering, to judge and presume what we know of another person's experience. And we can let that go. We can just say, I don't know what they're doing. And it's not meant to say, I don't care. But I think we're in a really strong exploration of empathy right now. And people are like, I'm so empathic. And yes, having sensitivity is very important and wonderful. But to recognize that we actually project our suffering on another person in order to make sense of what we're seeing in a situation that we can't otherwise know everything about. And that, what you just mentioned, reminds me of that. So when you look at a kid with like Down syndrome or cerebral palsy or autism or some, somebody who is appearing to be really suffering, consider that they may be masters in training, that they're like,
they generally are master teachers, master teaching souls, which are just, which is awesome. It's awesome when you think about it.
Yeah.
So you brought up something important, but I know you asked about the darkness, so I'll save that for another episode.
We can have maybe we just need to have you on a lot, because there's so dynamic, and your wisdom is really, I think, timely right now. So say what you said.
Thanks. Okay, what was coming up when you were saying that years ago, I had asked the Holy Spirit, because anytime that I ask specific questions, I get very specific answers. And I asked, where the hell is stress coming from? Man, my clients I'm seeing every day are worse. Not worse after seeing, but I mean worse. The new clients coming in are so much worse than they were 10 years ago. They're so much more stressed out. Like, where the hell does this come from? And the Holy Spirit said, that's easy. Stress comes from our wishes that we have, that we place upon others. So, and it showed me a very, very detailed, very, very simple thing to do with people, which I've done for many years now, which is this. Pretend, first off, pick a person that causes you stress. We'll do this with you. Pick anybody at all, that one person in your life that does cause you some stress.
Okay. I won't name any names.
No names.
No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. So if you won the emotional lottery, and that person could be any way at all, sky's the limit, and you weren't being nice, and you weren't being spiritual, if I asked you to try, even though this is not really your personality, even if I asked you to try to be petty,
okay,
and write down every different way that you wish that person could be. Now, they might be nice things. You might say, I wish that person was healthier. I wish they took care of themselves better. I wish they were happier. Or you might say, I wish they weren't an ass. I mean,
I wish they were nicer to themselves and honored their soul
okay.
content more.
Okay, well, there you go. That's one important thing. So basically what you do is first list all the ways that you wish that person was. Then the Holy Spirit showed me, go back once you've done that and go from 0 to 10. How much do I wish that was true?
Ah.
Then third thing
Mm-hmm.
is go back to the very first one that you wrote down and ask, is that really who this person is?
The thing that I want?
The thing that you wrote down, is that really who they are?
Ooh, that is juicy. Ooh.
And what if the answer is no, which it almost always is, you discovered something wonderful, which is a source of stress that doesn't need to be there. But first, we have to figure out what the hell are our wishes. Because a lot of people, when I have them do this, they're so shocked. Like one girl had 4 fucking pages for her husband, and she goes, are you fucking kidding me? I got 4 pages full of small writing. Small writing. She goes, no wonder I'm so fucking stressed.
Oh my gosh. But
so anyways,
can instantly be resolved though when it's like taking responsibility for the fact that we're projecting a whole lot of stuff onto others, and it's stressing us out.
Exactly, because here's what happens. Anytime that we hold a wish for any person at all, and I am including people that you don't know, person that cut you off in traffic.
Right.
If I say that person should be as good of a driver as I am, guess what? I'm going to be fucking stressed. I'm going to be super stressed out. Yeah. And what I'm actually doing is I'm walking over to that person and I'm handing them the keys to my happiness.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, if you're going to do this the way I want you to, I'll be happy. If you're not, I'm going to be upset. So when we realize that, why on earth would we ever give anyone, even people we really, really, really love, why would we give anybody that kind of power over us?
We wouldn't.
Makes no sense whatsoever.
We wouldn't.
So,
however, it's that subconscious programming. I mean, you have to reinvigorate a new way of approaching things, though, because it's like
exactly.
It's patterns.
So that's why this wish list works so well, because that third question, which is that really who they are? When you say no, now it's much, much easier to bring that down to 0. When you bring that wish down to 0, 2 things happen, and they're both magical. The first thing, you get completely out of stress because you're not disappointed anymore.
Right.
Second thing that happens.
You changed your expectations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Second thing that happens, you do the Jesus thing. A person gets accepted as they are.
You do the Jesus thing.
Yeah. I knew you'd laugh. That's what I always call it, the Jesus thing. Everybody laughs. So, anyways, it's so powerful. Like a personal example. After the Holy Spirit told me that, I was like, okay, who stresses me out? My dad. My dad stresses me out. Why does he stress me out? I wish he was normal. Whatever the fuck that is. There is no such thing as normal. There really isn't. I mean, there really is no such thing as normal.
Busted, having realistic expectations.
Oh my gosh. Well, one of the things that used to upset me, though, is like my dad has much better hearing, or did have much better. He's back in spirit now, but he had much better hearing than I have my whole life.
Oh, wow.
But he was a really big guy. And like would go into a restaurant and it'd be like, wonder what's on the menu. And everybody would stop what they're doing and look at you. Like some people would get scared and they'd cower down. And I mean, it was one of those where I'd always get so embarrassed until I realized he wasn't the one with the problem. He was perfectly happy being that way. I was the one with the problem because I was expecting him to be somebody else. And as long as I held on to that wish for him to be somebody else or be more like me, I was going to be stressed. But when I brought that down to 0, did he change? No, not at all. Now, though, I thought it was freaking hysterical, which is a much better feeling. I thought people's reactions were hysterical, which is a whole lot better feeling than being embarrassed.
Absolutely.
So,
and you wouldn't, if we weren't having these human experiences with people who drive us crazy, we wouldn't be having this experience that we came for. And then to also take it one step further and go into the space of sort of higher mindedness, so you can actually have fun with it again instead of being like, oh my gosh, like, mortified, or think of how many people are mortified by Trump currently. This exercise, all of you who are just like hating Trump or hating anyone else, Trump is just such a big one right now for people.
Yeah. Do you know what I think's really funny,
this exercise with Trump.
Do you know what I think's really funny is the people that think that he's really, really stupid. He's actually an NLP master. Pay attention to all of his things that he does. Every one of them are done on purpose, very, very calculated, tremendously calculated.
I agree with that, and I think what's, we could go completely off topic here, but I'll just say that your exercise, if people do it,
oh my gosh,
it's a game changer, people. Like,
so
if you're watching this show, you're ready to do these kinds of easy transformation steps to change your life. So, share, spread,
definitely,
make it
definitely. Definitely.
And
so
go ahead, finish it. And we're going over an hour.
Oh, okay.
And clearly, Michael, we're gonna have to do a lot more of this delicious stuff. But
sounds wonderful.
Share.
I'll just give you a very quick, for instance, that happened from this list. There's a lady who's 70 years old who had a lot of wishes of how her sister should be. After she ended up doing this list, because every time she went to visit her sister, who was her last surviving person that's here of her family, every time that she went to visit her, she would leave so angry and so stressed out. And after doing this list, bringing all of those wishes down to 0, she said, I left my sister smiling and happy because I stopped expecting her to be somebody else. She said, unbelievable. She said, for the first time since I was a little girl, we are getting along absolutely fantastic. Aww. She said, because she actually doesn't really have expectations of me. I was the one that had them and I had no idea. But she said, you helped me to realize what I was doing, and it completely changed everything. So it's so beautiful to watch people's transformations.
That's true.
So it's awesome.
And I think that's what everybody wants. Don't you want
absolutely
freedom, everybody?
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Michael, I love you. I really think
love you too.
Super amazing work in the world and helping humanity out. And so everybody who's watching this, we are gonna have Michael back if he'll have us, and we're gonna talk more about it and share your specific questions so that we can be even more targeted about stuff. There's really no topic that you won't talk about.
No, I'll talk about anything.
Yeah. And so also, why don't you give your website and the best way to contact you and anything else you want to just sort of plug.
Sure. So my website's www.michael, R as in Richard, Weir, WEIR.com. And my email, which is the best way of getting a hold of me, is at michaelrweir001@gmail.com.
Awesome.
And be more than happy to answer any questions. I do sessions with people worldwide. WhatsApp is generally best. I find it's best quality.
Yeah,
but if people don't want to download it, I can FaceTime or Skype also. And if they're local to Pittsburgh, they can come in person. So
that is so
yeah.
awesome. So you guys, I love you. Michael, I love you. And stay
Love
tuned
you too.
for more and just
love you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us share with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, you guys, so share, subscribe, and if you can, hit that notification button because we've got more of this good stuff coming your way. And
yeah, awesome.
Shine your bright light, people.
For sure. Take care.
Bye.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.